I see a lot of friends and neighbors, and I want to welcome people who don't live here in Fairfield. I've lived here for over 30 years, and this is the 40th year I've been going to caucuses. But this year I'm more excited about going to caucus than any other time. And the reason for that is that we have a candidate that can make a real change in our country. You all know that we have a rigged economy that's run by big corporations and big banks. You all know that we have the best government that money can buy. And one of the reasons I'm excited is that Bernie cannot be bought. Next Monday, you all have a chance to start that revolution. Go to your caucus. Go to your caucus and start that revolution. And we have a special person with us here today that's going to light that spark right here. I want you to carry that on to next Monday. So I'd like to introduce Susan Sarandon. Give her a big welcome.
I'm so happy to be here. I came from New York. The last time I was here, the then Senator Obama was swinging around again to Iowa to thank the people of Iowa for taking a chance on him. He was called unelectable. He was this guy with a funny last name that not too many people knew. And you guys listened to what he said. And I was so moved that you didn't listen to the pundits, you didn't listen to the machine, you made up your own minds. You went according to the issues, you listened to what he wanted to do, and you believed in him. And that restored my faith in what was going on in the process. I'm a woman, you might have noticed. And I have found a lot of resistance and a lot of sexist talk because I've chosen to support Bernie Sanders and not a woman. But for me, the thing that is important is a consistency, a moral courage, a consistency on issues through the years. It is a miracle that we have managed to get a candidate at this point who has not been bought, whose soul has not been sucked from them. The machine, he has stayed clear of the machine, and it has not been easy. And I'll tell you, this criticism about foreign policy, the most important foreign policy decision that was made in my lifetime, he was the one that stood very courageously and voted against going into Iraq. I know because it was traumatizing for me when I questioned it. This was, people were psychically nuts. It was a very difficult time in the United States. I mean, we'd never been through anything like it. It was understandable. We were looking for leaders. We were looking for sanity. And what we got, I don't have to explain to you what we got. It was horrible what happened. And that's where I stepped away from all those people that voted, because their children were not going. It was very easy for them to say yes. But Bernie stood, and if you Google his speech, it's the most extraordinary, prescient, and of course we're not happy that what he said came true, but it shows you that what's important is courage when it is not popular, to take a stand when it's not necessarily politically advantageous. And as a mother, that's the kind of person I want to be the commander-in-chief, not somebody that's going to be sending us off time and time again to solve problems in an unimaginative and violent way. He has been in the right place, saying the right things way before the tides turn to make it safe, and that's what we need to lead this country. So I beg you, as as a New Yorker, you're the guys that are going to be out there first. And we're all going to be looking to you. And I know my youngest son, who's a millennial, I have two that are millennials, he said, Mom, you don't have to convince people, you just have to give them the information. And that's what we have to do. We have to get him in the place where now finally the press will be following, and they are now because of what's happening here. But he hasn't really had a chance before the debates to really let people hear what's going on. And this criticism that, the $15 minimum wage has never happened. It's so cynical. Change is not an easy thing. It's never been an easy thing. It costs something. Imagine Martin Luther King and people had said to him, no, what you're trying to do is just way too difficult. We have to understand that he needs us. He's asking us now to be that machine, and we can do it, and you guys are the ones that are going to lead. So I'm going back to New York, praying that you will bring your neighbors, bring everyone, because we need you. And we do want a future to believe in. Thank you, and it is now my deep honor to introduce to you Senator Bernie Sanders.
Let me thank John and Susan for their introductions. And let me thank all of you. We were told there'd be a small crowd here today. Wrong again. And we got a few hundred people in the other room over there, so overflow room, hello! Susan made some very important points, as she often does. And by the way, I just want to thank Susan, not just for being in Iowa in the last few days, but because not only is she one of the great actresses in our country. Right? In fact, I met her, Jane and I met her many, many years ago when she came to Vermont to do a film called Sweetheart's Dance. And we got to know her then, and we've been friends ever since. But it's not only that she's a great actress, there are a lot of great actors in our country, but what she has done is used her fame to accelerate the fight for economic and social justice and for a world of peace. So we thank Susan very, very much. And I want to pick up on a point that Susan made. It is often very easy to be loud and strong when the tide is with you, when the majority of the people support you. It's not so easy when you are in the minority. I'm thinking back to the early 1990s when I was first elected to the Congress from Vermont. And everybody said all of these unfettered free trade agreements are going to be great. NAFTA will be just wonderful for American workers. And you had Republicans saying it, you got Democrats saying it. I did not believe that then, and what I believed was right. And I voted against NAFTA, against CAFTA, against PNTR with China. I was on the losing side of all of those trade agreements, but history has shown that when we have lost 60,000 factories in this country since 2001, maybe these trade agreements were not good for the American worker. And that is why today I'm working hard to defeat the TPP and that was back in the early 1900s. And then we had this DOMA thing. Remember DOMA? Defense of Marriage Act. And you had all the Republicans and too many Democrats saying, we are going to make it very difficult for people who are gay to get married. And most people voted for that disastrous piece of legislation. They apologized years later when the world changed. I don't have to apologize because I voted against the law. And then I'm thinking back to the late 90s when Wall Street and virtually all of the Republicans and too many Democrats said, you know what, let's deregulate Wall Street. Let's get the government off the back of these honest, decent people in Wall Street so they can go out and improve the economy. I didn't believe it then. I didn't believe it now. I voted against deregulation. And now what I believe is not only that we have to bring back 21st century Glass-Steagall legislation, we've got to break up these huge financial institutions. Then, as Susan reminded us, we get into 2002. And we have President Bush and Vice President Cheney and Don Rumsfeld, Secretary of Defense, and Condoleezza Rice, and a number of Democrats telling us that we should invade Iraq. And I listened, and I will tell you this from a personal level. Issues of war and peace, Republicans will tell you this, Democrats will tell you this. It's a special issue because you know that if war breaks out, young people in your own state, people who you know, may not come home alive. I listened very carefully, I honestly did, to what Bush and Cheney and all the others had to say. And I concluded that they were not telling the truth. I voted against the war. So Susan indicated, yeah, it's easy to swim with the tide. There's been a revolution in attitude about gay marriage. Today, everybody's for gay marriage. But when the going was rough, some of us were there, some of us were not there. Which takes us to where we are today. And today, where we are is living in an economy which is rigged, an economy in which the rich get much richer while most other people become poorer. An economy in which the top 1/10% now owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. An economy in which the 20 wealthiest people in this country own more wealth than the bottom half of American society. An economy in which one family, the Walton family of Walmart, own more wealth than the bottom 40% of the American people. That is an economy which is not sustainable, which is not moral, and which is not what America is supposed to be about. So are you ready for a radical concept? Notwithstanding Wall Street or corporate America, notwithstanding all of the super PACs in the world, together we are going to create an economy which works for working families, not just the top 1%. And here's something else that we're going to do, and I speak to you as the former chairman of the Senate Veterans Committee, somebody who has worked very hard to make sure that our veterans get the health care and other benefits that they have earned. When I talk to veterans who put their lives on the line in World War II and Korea, people have come back without legs or arms, fighting to protect American democracy. I look at what is happening today as a result of this disastrous Supreme Court decision on Citizens United, and it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart because what democracy in this country is supposed to be about is one person, one vote. It is not about billionaires buying elections. So together, not only will we overturn this disastrous Citizens United decision, we are going to move toward public funding of elections. I want this country to have one of the highest voting turnouts in the world, not one of the lowest voting turnouts. I want any American, whether you're progressive, conservative, moderate, I want you to be able to run for office, to fight for your ideas without having to beg billionaires for campaign contributions. When we talk about the major issues facing our country and the world, let us be very clear. Despite what Republican candidates believe, the scientific community is virtually unanimous. Climate change is real. Climate change is caused by human activity and is already causing devastating problems in this country and around the world. Jane and I have 4 kids and 7 beautiful grandchildren. We have a moral responsibility for all of the children in this world to leave them a planet that is healthy and habitable. And that means that yes, we are going to take on the Koch brothers and the fossil fuel industry. Yes, we are going to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel, away from the Keystone Pipeline, the Bakken Pipeline, and move toward energy efficiency and sustainable energy. And in that regard, I want to congratulate the people of Iowa. You have been leaders in this country in sustainable energy, in wind and biofuels. Thank you for your leadership. And when we talk about the future of this country, it is a no-brainer to understand that we do not succeed as an economy, as a democracy, unless we have a well-educated population. It is beyond my comprehension that we have hundreds of thousands of bright young people today who have the ability, who have the desire to go to college, but they can't go to college for one reason, and that is their families lack the money. That is crazy. It is not only unfair to those kids, It is unfair to our economy because God only knows what kind of intellectual potential we are throwing away. Now, Iowa, it turns out, as I'm sure many of you know, Iowa has been historically one of the leaders in America, one of the leading states in the fight for public education. Do you all know that? Going way back. And the truth is that 100, 150 years ago, it was an extraordinary breakthrough when working families said, you know what? We don't want our kids working in factories or on the farms. We want them to have the opportunity to get an education. We're going to fight for free public education from first grade through high school. What an extraordinary, revolutionary achievement. Today, though, is 2016, and the world has changed. And what a high school degree was 50, 60 years ago is in many ways what a college degree is today. 50, 60 years ago, if you got a high school degree, you were one of the better educated people. Not everybody made it through high school. And you were able to go out and get a good job, make it into the middle class. Today, in many respects, not all, but in many respects, that's what a college degree is about. And that is why I believe that today, in 2016, when we talk about public education, we have to expand that concept and say that today we must make public colleges and universities tuition free. And when we deal with higher education, we also have to appreciate the absurdity, the absolute absurdity that millions of people in our country, some young, some not so young, are being crushed under onerous student debt levels. All over the state. How many people here have student debt? There you go. Oh, there you go. All right, dare I ask what kind of debt you have? How much? 20,000? 70. 120,000? Sister. 20 years of paying it back. You know, I feel like a Vermont auctioneer up here trying to get the worst story of the day. I think you're winning so far. Your sister, 120,000. Getting a master's degree, 120,000. I've been all over this state, and obviously I've talked to people in my own state. A few weeks ago, I met a young man here in Iowa. He is working in sustainable energy, trying to do his best to improve the quality of life for all of our people. He has $90,000 in debt, paying over 50% of his income in student debt. In Vermont, talked to a woman whose dream it was to go to medical school and then practice primary health care. We are in desperate need of primary health care physicians, by the way. And what she got from that, and that's what she's doing a great job, she is now $300,000 in debt. And I thought that was the highest that I had ever heard, but I was in Des Moines many months ago, and I mentioned that, and some woman came up to me after I spoke. She said, $300,000 in debt. I just graduated dental school, $400,000 in debt. All right, so what's the point? The point is that it is insane that we are punishing people, crippling them financially for years, for decades. Talk to a guy in Nevada, 55 years of age. He's been paying off his student debt for 25 years. You've been paying off for 20 years. This guy was further behind than when he started. Further behind, and he was worried, literally worried, that when he got Social Security, they would garnish his Social Security to pay his student debt. We should not be punishing people for the dream and desire of getting an education. We should be rewarding people. So we will do, and I've got legislation in to do it right now, it does two things. Number one, makes public colleges and universities tuition-free. Number two, allows people who have student debt to refinance at the lowest possible interest rates they can find. Now, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, and all of these big establishment papers say, great idea, but it's too expensive. How are you going to pay for it? And I will tell you how we're going to pay for it. We're going to pay for it through a tax on Wall Street speculation. When Wall Street collapsed, the middle class bailed them out. Now it is Wall Street's time to help the middle class in this country. Susan mentioned that change never comes without struggle. That is the history of America and the history of the world. That is absolutely true. It's always easier for people to look back, but when you're in the midst of the fight, it ain't so easy. And here's a fight that I intend to wage. Now, I am on a committee called the Health Education Labor Committee, chaired, by the way, for a while by your former Senator Tom Harkin. And Tom and I and others worked to write the Affordable Care Act. And the Affordable Care Act has done a number of important things which should not be diminished, not be ignored. We have done away with this obscenity called pre-existing conditions. 18 million more Americans now have health insurance as a result of the ACA. Women are not forced to pay higher premiums because they are women. And a lot of other things in that bill have helped the American people. But, and here is an important but, today the United States remains the only major country on earth that does not guarantee health care to all people as a right. Now, I have been criticized for this time and time again. So let me be very clear. Let my critics hear it straight from the horse's mouth. Well, I don't know, that's exactly what I meant to say. Straight from the candidate's mouth. I believe that health care is a right of all people, not a privilege. I believe that when we have 29 million people without any health insurance still, when we have even more people, including people in this room, who are underinsured with high deductibles and high co-payments. Anybody here have high deductibles? All right. How much? $6,000. Just for you? Okay. $10,000. Employer sponsor $10,000. Paying $10,000. What's the point? The point is that we have 29 million people with no health insurance at all, and yet many more, including people in this room, who have high deductibles and high copayments. And when you have a high deductible and a high copayment and you don't have a lot of money, you know what happens? You don't go to the doctor when you should. And the truth is, there are, and I talk to doctors in Vermont and all over the place. Every doctor you talk to will tell you that at some point or another in his or her career, they have lost patients. People have died unnecessarily because they didn't get to the doctor's office when they should. Or when they walked in, they were so sick, they go right to the hospital at great expense to the system. And then on top of all of that, today, because of the power of the pharmaceutical industry, which spends hundreds of millions of dollars in lobbying and campaign contributions. We pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. 1 out of 5 Americans cannot afford to purchase the prescription drugs their doctors prescribe. That is crazy. I mean, just think. Why do you go? You go to the doctor because you're sick. Doctor says, okay, this is what's wrong. Here's your prescription. They can't afford to fill the prescription. What happens? They get sicker. They'll end up in the emergency room, end up in the hospital. And yet in the last year, and this is what we are taking on in its entirety, not just Wall Street, not just corporate America, you're taking on a pharmaceutical industry which in the last year, the top 3 drug companies in this country made $45 billion in profit when people can't afford to fill their prescriptions. And that is why I believe that we must move toward a Medicare for all single-payer program. And what that concept does is not only provide comprehensive health care to all of our people, what it does is it will save the average middle-class family thousands of dollars a year on their health care bills. There is no rational reason why we are spending almost 3 times per capita what the British are spending, who guarantee health care to all their people, 50% more than the French guaranteeing health care to all their people, far more than the Canadians who guarantee health care to all of their people. If the rest of the industrialized world can guarantee health care to all their people in a cost-effective way, so can the United States of America. I'm criticized every day for thinking too big that the United States of America can do all of these things. Provide education to our kids, provide health care to all people, end this disgraceful level of income and wealth inequality. I'm attacked every day. We can't do it. We're not smart enough. We're not strong enough. We don't have the courage. I disagree, and I'll tell you what else I disagree in. I will do, with your help, everything possible to end the international disgrace of this country having more people in jail than any other country on earth. We are the wealthiest country in the history of the world. But most people don't know it because almost all of the new income and wealth goes to the top 1%. And we got kids by the millions who are hanging out on street corners because they can't get decent jobs. So here's another radical idea. Together we are going to invest in education and jobs for the kids, not jails and incarceration. The other thing that we are going to do is tackle this never-ending crisis of institutional racism and a broken criminal justice system. I was a mayor for 8 years, and I worked very closely with my police department. And the truth is, the vast majority of police officers all over this country are honest, hardworking, and have a very, very difficult job. But when a police officer breaks the law, like any other public official, that officer must be held accountable. And we must address this issue of immigration reform. Now, let me just say two things on that. First, people can disagree, and I'll tell you my views on immigration reform. People can disagree. It's called democracy, and people are entitled to different points of view. But what is not acceptable is people like Donald Trump using racism and bigotry and xenophobia against people from Mexico or elsewhere. That is not acceptable. We have 11 million people in this country who are undocumented. I believe that we need comprehensive immigration reform, and I believe we need a path toward citizenship for those undocumented. On Monday night, 4 days, the entire country will be looking at Iowa, and in fact, a lot of the world will be looking at Iowa. And what really is at stake in the Democratic caucus is not just the names, Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton or Martin O'Malley. What really is at stake is a vision for America. That's what is at stake, and what the vision is about, and what this election is about, is do we as a people have the courage to come together to take on the big money interests, to take on Wall Street and corporate America and the corporate media and the big donors, and create the kind of country that all of us know that we can become, or do we continue with same old establishment politics? That is the issue on the ballot. And let me tell you this. I have absolute confidence. We have come a long, long way because of your help here in Iowa in the last 9 months. We were used to be 30, 40, 50 points behind. Now the race is about even. Some of the polls have us a few points up. Some of the polls have Hillary Clinton a few points up, but it's about even. But this is what I believe. I believe that if on Monday night there is a large turnout, if many, many thousands of people start pouring in to the precincts all over this state, we'll win. If there is a small turnout, likelihood is we will not win. So that's what this campaign is about. It's what it's always been about. It's about bringing people into the political process in order to transform America economically, politically, environmentally. And the first test is in Iowa on Monday night. For the sake of our kids, for the sake of our country, we cannot fail. Let's win on Monday. Thank you.
Thank you.